Well, we'll send to start the meeting if it. There we go. Right, you're going to be live any second now. You're live now, Councillor Rice.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to North Edgbaston online ward meeting in these extraordinary times. Welcome to our December meeting. I've just got to remind residents participating and listening to this meeting, the recording will be available for future reference, and that'll be on the City Council website, I suspect. Okay, as we did last time, we are going to have an update from the Public Health Department of Birmingham City Council, COVID-19 update, and we're delighted to have Dino Motti, Public Health Registrar, who will provide the latest news and hopefully fill us in on vaccine and all those wonderful scientific initiatives that have been happening since we last met. So over to you, Dino.
Thank you, Councillor Rice, and good evening, everyone. As Councillor Rice said, I am deputising today for the Director of Public Health, Justin Varney, and I'm Dr. Motti, a Public Health Registrar. I work within the Public Health Division of Birmingham City Council. And I will update you on the situation in Birmingham in terms of numbers and give, obviously, as you've all known, things have changed. As of yesterday, Birmingham is being classed in Tier 3 out of 3 tiers in the nation, which means very high alert. That picture shows obviously Birmingham at a very high level of infection, but it also should be said that the numbers are coming down. So there are decreasing numbers. So 1 week ago we were 352 per 100,000. Now we are 239, which is a significant decrease, but we're still within the high alert tier, and therefore we have been classed at Tier 3. In terms of North Edgbaston, just to give you a more focused image of your specific area, North Edgbaston is the 17th out of 71 wards in Birmingham, and the numbers are not decreasing as significantly as the rest of Birmingham, due specifically to the fact that the numbers are smaller. So we have moved from 95 to 70 cases. And it is a decrease, but it's not significant. So the ward is classed as a stationary ward in terms of numbers. But we will see in the following weeks. This is week on week. We'll see in the next weeks whether the trend continues and it becomes a significant decrease. The moving to Tier 3, which is what most of you will probably have heard on the news, means that we're not in lockdown. So there is a relative relaxation of rules, but these rules are the most stringent still in the UK for Tier 3 areas. It means that there can be no meetings indoors or in most outdoor places with anybody you do not live with or you're not in a support bubble with, and this includes private gardens and most outdoor venues. You must not socialize in groups of more than 6 in some other outdoor public spaces, including parks, countryside, public gardens. This is called the Rule of 6. For more details, you can go on the government website, which details exactly every specific circumstance. Hospitality settings, as you probably know, bars, pubs, cafes, shisha bars are closed, but they can operate as takeaway or delivery services. Accommodation must close, and we're talking about hotels, bed and breakfast, campsites. There are some exceptions here, but they're just for people that live there or need to go there for specific purposes. Indoor, most outdoor entertainment, again, tourist venues, indoor attractions are closed. Indoor shops can remain open, but leisure and sports facility can continue to stay open. Group exercise and indoor sport classes cannot go ahead indoors. So there are a series of very specific rules that are there to minimize the spread, obviously in an area which still sees a high level of infection. You can reach, just the message is that it can reach venues and amenities which are allowed, but you should try as far as you can to reduce the number of journeys that you make whenever possible, and you should avoid traveling outside of your area. There is a list, a really detailed list of exemptions on the government website, and I can provide the councillors the link. but even from the Birmingham City Council website, you will access the exact same link that I will be sharing, so you can find that on Birmingham City Council. The other update, and this is an update which is as recent as this one, is around the Christmas bubbles. As you probably have heard, between the 23rd and 27th of December, you will have the possibility of forming an exclusive bubble, which means that it has to be only one and with no more than 3 households and cannot be changed. That allows for families to meet around the festivities, but it is a balance of risk. And that balance of risk is something you have to consider very carefully, because the risk of infection is still real and high, especially for the elderly and for those clinically vulnerable. So you should consider other ways to celebrate Christmas if possible, using technology or meeting outdoors. And yeah, this is really important, because it's obviously a balance of risk, and it needs to be something that you consider, because we really don't want to see any body getting infected under Christmas, and we don't want to see an uptick in infections now that we're getting close to deploy a vaccine. And the councillor mentioned the plans for the vaccines, and I must be transparent, I'm not cited to the specific plans for the rollout in the general population yet. I know that the first to receive the vaccines will be residents in nursing and care homes, and there are plans to start this very soon. And following that, there will be a rollout of the vaccination for the NHS staff and healthcare staff, in order for them to operate safely and to be able to provide care to those that need it with limited risk for spread and for themselves. But the exact details for the rollout to the whole population are, to my knowledge, not yet public. So I would love to answer questions on that, but I am not informed. That if you want to ask some questions, I can go back and as soon as I have that information, return to the councillors, and from them spread it out. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer.
Okay, thanks, Dino. It is a bit strange because people can't use the video and the verbal link to ask questions. There is a Q&A box, so if you hover over the photo, so if you look at Dino's face, if you just move your mouse over his face, then a little box will come up, and you'll see 2 voice bubbles, one with a question mark in. If you click on that, the question and answer box will come up, and then you type in your question and we'll do our best to answer it. Dino, I know you didn't mention that you can't answer questions on the vaccine, but this week I was contacted by my GP for the first time to have a flu jab, and I know that flu jabs are being rolled out for everybody over 50, so anybody listening in who's over 50 should be getting a call from their GP for a flu jab. And I suspect that this is one of the reasons why they're doing it, is just to see how we cope with upping the numbers of people who are going to get vaccines, because it'll be very, very interesting. I'm having mine done on Saturday, early Saturday morning. But if you could just put on that, Dino, the expansion of the flu jab.
Absolutely. I mean, the flu jab, sorry, I'm live now. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is a very important point. We're not talking about just COVID vaccine, which is a novel initiative. We just developed these vaccines, and we are, I mean, the country is working towards their rollout nationwide, but we're talking about also a vaccine that we know and that we are advised to take every season for flu. And the reason why we're advised to take it this year more than any time before is because the co-infection of the 2 viruses is very dangerous. So we don't want anybody getting the flu and COVID at the same time, and also because we don't want anybody that doesn't need to attend hospitals. And hospitals these days are already tackling obviously a high number of COVID cases, And with the flu vaccine, you can be reducing your risk of being infected with the flu and going to hospital, where it will be immediately very difficult to distinguish the flu from COVID, and you will be exposed to further risk of getting infected with COVID. So the advice, as Councillor said, is of contacting your GP if the GP has not contacted you yet, and getting vaccinated if you are in the age groups that need and are advised to do that. In general, it is protective to you and to your family members. So it's not just an individual responsibility, but it's a collective responsibility.
Okay, Dina, we've got a few questions. Have you got your Q&A box open so you can see them?
Sorry, I was just looking. So I see, am I right in thinking people need to leave a gap of 2-3 weeks between having flu jab and C19 jab? I personally don't know the exact protocol with these, but the flu jab is available now, and the COVID-19 jab won't be available within 2-3 weeks. So there is no reason why you cannot leave 2 or 3 weeks, because literally the two are not available now. So you certainly should get vaccinated with the flu in this specific moment as soon as possible. And the COVID-19 jab will not be available to the general population, certainly within the next 2 or 3 weeks anyway. So the advice is to get vaccinated for the flu as soon as you can, if you are within the population that are advised to do that.
Okay, and there's another one. Is there any possibility Birmingham will move down a tier on the 16th of December?
I cannot predict what will happen on the 16th of December in terms of rates, but obviously the rates in Birmingham are checked regularly, daily, and there is a lot of interest, obviously, making sure that we're not enforcing regulations on the population when it's unnecessary. That said, the 16th of November seems to me relatively soon for a review, given that we are then entering the Christmas period. But again, it's a national decision that is reviewed regularly. I cannot say whether on the 16th will be moving to tier 2.
And it's not just infection rates that they take into account. They take into account things like hospital admissions and a whole range of data. So it's not simply whether Birmingham's infection rates are falling. It's all to do with a basket of measures which decisions are taken upon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. I had my flu jab yesterday. It was very efficiently delivered. Well, thank you, Fiona. I've got nothing to fear on Saturday then. Thank you very much for that. Kay, 1 or 2 people have texted me on my phone to say that they're struggling to get into the meeting. There's something wrong with the link. I don't know what you can do at this late stage, but if you could do something, it would be very useful.
If you can ask them to join via the web, that might help them. And also I sent them a guidance on how to join if they want to look at that. I'm a bit frightened to try and get out and start emailing
no.
I'll do something.
I'll text them. Okay, that's about it, I think. Then Dino, I think you've answered all the questions. Can I thank you very much for coming along this evening, and I know that you and the rest of the public health team are really busy, obviously. I'm glad that the public health division was transferred over to local authorities from the NHS a few years ago. I think it's better placed here because we are closer to the people, because we have meetings like this. Councillors are much more local, and there is I wouldn't say that the NHS has a democratic deficit, as it used to be called, but I think that it's best placed in the local authorities. So thank you very much indeed for coming along this evening. Thank you.
And thank you so much for the opportunity. It was an absolute privilege and an honor to update you tonight. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next item is something that we've discussed on many occasions here at North Edgbaston Ward Forum. It's to do with the building of the new Midland Metropolitan Hospital, and critically for residents living in and around that area, the Winson Green, Dudley Road area. It's to do with the impact on traffic. Anybody who lives reasonably close to the QE, like me, will know the massive impact that mainly staff, but also visitors to the QE have on surrounding roads. They park for, I think people park up to about a mile and a half away from the hospital in residential streets and walk in to avoid paying car parking charges. So I'm delighted that we've got various people coming along this evening. Rebecca Farr, John Myatt and Rachel Telfer are all here to explain the work that's being undertaken in the area to try and address projected and predicted traffic issues. So Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Can I just check that people can see the screen with the presentation on?
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to try and make it full screen, but I'm reluctant to fiddle about with it and lose it because I've had no end of problems with presentations on screens today. So hopefully everyone can see this and we can make it available should people wish to view it later. As Councillor Rice says, I've got a couple of colleagues with me today. Rachel, who's going to talk in more detail about some of the transport work, and also my colleague Neil, who is leading on some of the Smethwick to Birmingham corridor work and will join and add additional comments if there's particular things that I don't cover effectively, and may also be able to help with answering any questions. So as Councillor Rice kindly introduced, he's this meeting has obviously had conversations previously about concerns around traffic impact when the hospital opens. It's something that we take very seriously, and it's something that we're working jointly with the hospital and with Sandwell Council about. I'm just going to take you through the sort of 3 or 4 areas of work that are happening to look at both the immediate impact in the immediate local area of the hospital, and as Councillor Rice said, sort of the walking distance, but also to support people in accessing the hospital by other means and making travel to the hospital efficient and effective for everyone who needs to visit, whether they're staff or patients. I'm going to hand over to Rachel first of all to talk about the Midland Metropolitan Hospital University Hospital Transport Working Group and also some existing initiatives, and then I'll cover the wider corridor framework activity after that. So Rachel, I'll pass on to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So as Rebecca alluded to, we've been working with Sandwell Council as well as the hospital itself, and also Transport for West Midlands, who oversee the public transport network in the West Midlands area. So a working group for focusing on transports established with these parties, and this is going to allow us to review the existing transport proposals that are related to the hospital. Obviously the hospital has had planning permission, so reviewing those proposals that are within that application, and then we'll move on to working with the hospital itself to support the staff that will be working there to use alternative modes of transport when travelling to and from work. So the City Council, and as well as Sandwell Council and TFWM, do a lot of this work across the city with businesses, different initiatives to encourage staff to maybe cycle to work or walk to work or use the bus or the train instead of using their own cars. And also working to identify local highway interventions on the local highway network that's managed by Birmingham and Sandwell. And then with transport for West Midlands, more of a focus on public transport network, so it's obviously rail and bus facilities along the corridor. And so from this working group, we can work together to make sure all of this activity is coordinated. Everyone knows what's going on. We're not all doing our own bit in our own offices, that it all should work better together to make sure when the hospital opens that we don't have any significant issues like potentially could occur that happened around the QE site. So if we move on to the next slide.
Try to. There we go, that should do it.
Oh, okay, there it is. So we have had an update from our colleagues at Sandwell Council. They've been undertaking some work around the Cranford Street and Grove Lane corridors, where there's housing developments proposed, and also really close to the hospital itself. Obviously, this is really near to the boundary with Birmingham. They've been undertaking some traffic modelling and assessments of the existing highway network. So we know that at the present time, maybe not exactly present due to COVID conditions, but a typical present time during the peak period, that we see a lot of congestion. It's very tidal, so people go into Birmingham and then in the evening out again. They've also assessed the potential impact of the hospital when it opens. So obviously it will generate traffic, and within the modelling that they've undertaken, they've also assessed that as well. And from this modelling, they also incorporated the key housing development sites in the area as well. So from all of this modelling work, they've identified two specific junctions that could benefit from improvements, and they are shown on screen. So it's the 4-arm signalised junction of Soho Way, Cranford Street, Grove Lane, Wimwell Lane. And so initially they've looked to how they could upgrade that roundabout junction, and then the other one is Cranford Street, London Street, Argyle Way, and that's also another upgrade. So what the work that's been ongoing at present is further modelling and testing of those potential improvement schemes at those specific locations. So they should have that work back soon from their consultant, and from there they can then develop these schemes further, and we can, along with the other work that Rebecca will come on to next, we can work together to develop those schemes that will help to mitigate some of the impact of the hospital itself.
Hey.
Oh, and we also have our own scheme within the Birmingham boundary, the Dudley Road Transport Scheme, which Saeed, who's on the agenda later, will give you all an update on. And alongside that, on a more active travel level, we have the Greater Icknield Walking Zone. So that project has looked at the area within of Greater Icknield to see how we can improve walking routes through the area. And further development work on that will be undertaken in the coming months, and then we'll look to deliver some of those initiatives over the coming year.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll move on to talk a little about the Smethwick to Birmingham corridor framework, which is a piece of work that has been discussed over a period of time, with reflecting the fact that the boundary is a fairly artificial, arbitrary boundary, and that to certainly those of you living in the immediate area, you're moving backwards and forwards between Birmingham and Sandwell. Traffic doesn't fit within one local authority. Housing, education, etc. It doesn't sit within a local authority area. It sits within a community, and it's very much the case that there's really strong links across that boundary. So Birmingham and Sandwell Council, along with the combined authority, have jointly commissioned a cross-boundary plan, which will do a couple of things. It will have an overarching strategy, spatial strategy, which will enable us then to drive forward some site-specific master planning, and alongside that, it will create an overarching transport strategy for the corridor, taking into account obviously the hospital, new development opportunities, areas with potential for change. It will be used to encourage investment into the area, to support funding bids, to help unlock development, and to create a long-term vision for the area. And clearly everyone in this meeting knows what roughly the area we're talking about, but I'll just put a plan up. We've got the City Hospital down the bottom end, and then moving up through the new Midland Metropolitan Hospital and up into the Sandwell area. It takes in a number of really significant housing sites, which is important that we plan in a cohesive way across the boundary for those, and ensuring that we deliver appropriate facilities to go with that. The key areas of focus, as I've mentioned, obviously Grove Lane and the area surrounding the hospital, the City Hospital site, the local centres in the area, so Dudley Road Local Centre and the local centre at Smethwick High Street, are really important and increasingly important in the current situation, where people need to be able to access local services and access shops easily within their immediate area. The canal network is also an important opportunity within the area, linking, for example, City Hospital and the new hospital, and that presents a number of opportunities. Although the piece of work is only in its infancy, there are a number of partners involved in delivering this. I've mentioned the Combined Authority, also Homes England, the Hospital Trust and the Canal and Rivers Trust. And working together, those partners have developed some initial priorities that we think need exploring further. So I've already referred to residential development, the importance of growth being inclusive and supporting people through education, job creation, opportunities for improved health and well-being. Connectivity and transport will be really important, and improvements to green spaces, in which I think we could include canals as green corridors. So, as I said, this work is just commencing. The consultant team I'm going to call on Neil to confirm when they're actually due to commence the work formally, but they will be carrying out some stakeholder engagement in the new year, and then preparing a draft framework for some wider consultation into the summer. I think I'll pause there. I'll invite Neil to add any comments that I think might be worth adding, and then happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, so in terms of, so it's Neil here. In terms of getting the consultant team and getting the project up and running, we're hoping to do that within the next 2 weeks, and then so we can start talking to local people, including ward councillors and other local stakeholders, as early as we can next year, with a view to having a consultation draft that people can express their comments on and can see, and we'll hold public events in relation to that if possible in early summer next year. The timetable is quite constrained by local elections in Sandwell and the Combined Authority, so it would be probably June, July, after they have new administration in place. But that's the timetable we're working to, and we'd be very happy to come back, as I'm sure Rebecca would agree, and provide updates to this meeting when we have some more substantive things to say about the options and directions that things could be taking.
I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, you've got one from me.
Oh, right. Let me see if I can scroll down. So residents parking schemes and one-way streets. Absolutely, if there's evidence that those are the appropriate measures to take, then those measures will be implemented. I think, having learned, and all of us did learn at the city from what happened with the Queen Elizabeth, we need to be planning ahead for that. Alongside that, and I think we mentioned it in the presentation, we're working really closely with the Hospital Trust, who are really keen to find ways of reducing the number of cars. I was going to say coming to site. That's not your concern, actually, is it? It's the cars that don't make it as far as the hospital site.
Yes.
That's probably the bigger issue. But really trying to find ways of providing, and there is quite a lot of car parking actually on the hospital site, more I believe than at, or I'm just trying to remember now. It's Neil, was it more than at QE or not quite as much? But it was, the size of the hospital is different.
It's substantially less than a QE.
But there's a different size of hospital, isn't it?
Yeah.
Different scale that we're working to.
I think there are 1,600 car parking spaces on this new hospital site, as against about 4,000 at the QE. I do recall from reading the travel plan that was submitted with the planning application for the Midland Hospital, that they would investigate the need for controlled parking areas around the site, and that was the onus was on the Hospital Trust to do that. I don't know if Rachel knows anything more about that, but we could ask Samuel for an update on that as an action from this meeting, to see what was concluded about whether they needed additional parking controls in the surrounding areas.
And I think what we could also do is, whatever was concluded previously, we could ask the working group just to re-examine that and confirm that they're happy with the work that's been done, and you know, scenarios change. It's some years since that work would have been done, so we can certainly ask the working group to review that and feed back to us.
Okay. Have you got the next question?
I just need to scroll down. So Fiona has asked a question about if constraints prevent local meetings, the consultation will be able to do it online. Absolutely. We're looking at all sorts of different ways. A number of our colleagues this evening are at a meeting in Sutton Coldfield about the town centre master. Say they're at a meeting, they're in a call like this about the Sutton Coldfield town centre master plan, consulting local people about that. We always publish documents online anyway. We can seek to find ways that we can communicate with people within the local community, and if there's ways in which people think that will best be done, perhaps that could be either fed back now, absolutely, or fed back through local members if there's approaches that you think would really help in this scenario. Chris Vaughan, yeah, I completely agree. The green spaces are absolutely vital in this area, and particularly given the current scenario. We have two questions really about engaging local residents and not just organisations. Yes, absolutely. I suspect the approach will be to initially engage with some key organisations and state and representative groups within the area, and then to take the next step of engaging more widely. But again, if there's particular people that we should be engaging with as stakeholders, then that's absolutely welcomed if people want to make recommendations. As to the form of the resident engagement, it will be serious engagement, but as per my answers to some of the previous questions, it's a little difficult to describe exactly what that's going to look like at the moment, not knowing whether we can do in-person meetings or whether we're going to have to do things online, but we would look to do a variety of different events or opportunities for people to engage, and for us to engage with local people across a period of time that reflects different people's availability. So if we can do events in person, we do mornings, afternoons, evenings, weekends. We seek to make it as flexible as possible and provide people with as many different opportunities to participate. Is that an so we've got North Edgbaston Residents Group. Yes, we can certainly work with the residents group. And then Councillor Rice, you've commented on the walking strategy. That is a good question. Rachel, do you know whether the walking zone documentation is available on the website?
I don't know if it is.
We'll check that out,
yeah,
for you, Mr. Rice, and we'll come back to you once we've got some clarity on that.
But it is a public document. I know it's a draft at the moment, isn't it?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, Sharon and I have been consulted on it, and I know the Ladywood councillors have. If people want a copy, we can send it through email, can we?
I would think so. I'm literally just Googling it to see if it comes up on the council website. It's not in the first few. Councillor Rice, we'll get the information on that for you and come back to you.
If people want access to it, then email me or Sharon, and we'll do our very, very best to get you a copy via email. When I was consulted, Rebecca, I made the point that I know a lot of us have been walking more regularly during the lockdown. I am amazed at the number of overgrown bushes, the number of pavements which are in disrepair, and critically, the number of cars which block pavements for pedestrians. Any walking strategy has got to address those really basic management issues. That a document is no good unless these walking routes are regularly maintained to make sure that there's no problems for people using them.
That's great, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Rice, I think Councillor Thompson wants to.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
he totally forgets that I'm here, Kay.
No, I don't.
Hello,
Sharon, I'm looking at the Q&A, so you need to I can't look at 4 documents at the same time. I'll do my best. Go on, Sharon.
Just that, I mean, Rebecca, one of the things that I'll start off by saying is that I'm glad that there's a real attempt to do a collaborative piece with colleagues in Sandwell, and I know that Wasim and I have been involved in some of those conversations, so that bit's welcomed. I'm also very welcoming the fact that the Canal and Rivers Trust to be involved in that for the points that Carl made around the walking. The bit that I did want to just pick up on was around transportation and the car parking. Now, my experience of hospital car parking is, although you can have a lot of car parking spaces within a hospital, that is often not the issue. The issue usually is that the cost of parking in the car park is too high, or is high, which means people then start to look for parking on the side streets.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the transportation side of it and the car parking questions, I'd be really keen that economic piece is not forgotten, because 6,000 parking spaces in a car park, if it's not seen as cost effective for people, they will go onto the streets more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I mean, I don't live too far from the QE, the Councillor Rice, so I've seen it there and at other hospitals that I've been visiting. So it's absolutely an issue, and it is one that the Hospital Trust recognises as well. They are they have a lot to say about being a good neighbour, and I think we really need to hold them to that. They want to be part of the community, and they want to be a positive part of the community, and that will only happen if they also participate in managing the traffic that they generate. So I think that working group that we have, and also them being part of the corridor framework, which they have a real buy-in to that, is really important in then holding them to account on what they need to do for their car parking. Whilst we can implement the measures, we need them to encourage their staff and patients where possible to sort of operate in line with those accommodations that we can make. So absolutely take your point.
And then just from the residents' engagement,
yeah,
I remember some time back when we was in the council house, Carl and I met with, alongside a number of residents from North Edgbaston, met with Toby when we first started talking about some of this stuff. And there was an absolute commitment to make sure that local people were engaged. And I think it's fair to say that the commitment was more than just, we're going to consult you at certain points.
Yeah.
It was proper, keeping them engaged from start to finish and really having them involved in that process. And I wouldn't like to see that being lost. I appreciate that the fact that because of the current climate, it's very difficult because we're all online and we're not meeting in face. But I think that also means that there should be more of an effort made to make sure that documents are accessible, that people know where they are, and that where we can do online communication, that's done in a very strong manner, whether that's surveys, quick surveys, whether it's making sure that, you know, whether it's establishing if there's like a kind of a WhatsApp number that you can text out to if people sign up to it. I think there needs to be a lot of ways that we try to engage local people in the process and where they can actually easily identify information, because sometimes the council website can be a bit of a whole, you know, you need a whole master's degree just to get through it at times. Yeah.
I completely hear what you're saying. I think it's something that we really recognise and is something that we're looking at across all of the activity that Inclusive Growth is delivering. I really take that on board. I think there's huge benefits, obviously, to getting people involved and them having a role. You know, the local people who are listening in today, or perhaps people who are less involved in events like this but still have the opportunity to have their say and influence things, because it's got to work for local people. So absolutely take on board what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was a good point you made, Sharon. The meeting we had with Toby, I always call him Toby Jones, but it's not Toby Jones, he's Toby the actor.
Lewis.
Sorry?
Is it Toby
Lewis?
It's Toby Lewis. Yeah,
Toby Lewis. Yeah, he told us how if he finds any member of staff causing problems with parking in residential streets, he's on the case. So he's very, very proactive. He does genuinely want to be a good neighbour to local residents. It's just a very, very big logistical task. So the point about having joined up thinking across all the various agencies is well made, Sharon. Okay, I think that's it. We haven't got any more questions in the Q&A slot. Are we done then, Rebecca? Do you think that's it?
I think that's it on that one, but I think I'm covering the next item as well, am I not?
Yep. Okay. Let me just announce it then. Well, thank you, Rebecca, John, and Rachel, for the implications of the Midland Metro on surrounding roads. We now go on to item 5, which is the Edgbaston Reservoir Management Plan. And when we talk about the management plan, we talk about it from the perspective of nature conservation, how we can do to ensure the habitat is protected for the wonderful wildlife that many of us enjoy as we walk around the reservoir. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. I have a shorter presentation this time, but it's a no less important subject. I keep getting a little notification that my network quality isn't very good, so please someone wave if you lose me.
Well, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Excellent. Okay. As Councillor Rice says, this is in relation to the local nature reserve at Edgbaston Reservoir and the management plan for that area. I'm not by any means suggesting that there's anyone here who doesn't know where the reservoir is, but I have just included a plan which shows the extent of the local nature reserve. So it's all of the water, the wooded areas and footways around the reservoir, but not, for example, the sailing club or the Tower Ballroom site or the area between the reservoir wall and Icknield Port Road. So it's sort of focused on the natural elements of the area. Local nature reserve status, as Councillor Rice says, is there to protect and enhance the natural environment. The existing management plan was produced some years ago by the Black Country Wildlife Birmingham Black Country Wildlife Trust, and went so far in identifying key management projects and opportunities, but with things moving on over, both in terms of the way the world works more generally, but also with the emerging Edgbaston Reservoir Master Plan document, it's seen as the right time to update the master plan. To update the management plan. The work again is being carried out by the Birmingham Black Country Wildlife Trust, commissioned by the City Council, and the brief for the work was agreed by the Local Nature Reserve Committee, which Councillor Rice chairs. The purpose of the document is to set out what the current ecological features are and to provide management prescriptions on how these should be protected and enhanced. It also identifies opportunities to create further habitat on site and to enhance the nature diversity in the area. Importantly, I think for local people as well, is the management plan will identify opportunities for local people to engage with the management of the reservoir and support the implementation of projects, be involved in activity in person, and just to connect with nature. The initial sort of activity has been undertaken already by Sammy at the Wildlife Trust. She's done site surveys, she's looked at various historical records and ecological records, and she's prepared an initial assessment and draft objectives. Councillor Rice will be aware, following some discussions in the last few days, that we're seeking to issue a draft to stakeholders during December. And that includes the Local Nature Reserve Committee, people like Canal and Rivers Trust, who are landowners and obviously have an interest in the area. And then following that opportunity for comment, a revised draft incorporating feedback will be prepared during the early part of the new year, and the plan we are aiming to have finalised by the end of March. That's probably the extent of my summary on this, I think. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
This was mainly for information because it's the start of the process,
Yeah.
Becca. If people want a copy of the draft that's going to be available later this month, I think again, if people get in touch with either myself or Sharon, and we can ensure that you get a copy. We know Sammy from the Birmingham and Black Country Wildlife Trust. She sits on the local nature reserve, and we have every confidence in her coming up with a plan that will enhance the nature conservation element of the reservoir. I've been amazed when I've been walking around in recent months just how popular the reservoir is at all times of the day. I've walked around early in the morning, late at night, during the day, and it is phenomenally popular. And the amount of wildfowl that are on the reservoir has been amazing in terms of diversity. So I'm sure that Sammy will come up with something that people will be pleased with. But again, we do want to hear what you have to say. It is an important local resource. People often tell me it's not, the council may own it, but it's our reservoir, the people's reservoir, and I fundamentally agree with that statement. So we want it to be safe and we want it to be enjoyable, and so your comments and views will be most welcome. Okay, I think that's it then, Rebecca, on that issue. You can go and have your tea now. Can I thank you very much indeed for coming along this evening? It's always a pleasure.
Sorry, Councillor. Hey, there is a question in the Q&A box.
Oh, is there? Yes, sorry. I need to, yes.
Is there?
Yes, the reservoir and the harbour walkway have been two of the best council provisions to keep everyone sane throughout lockdown. Both facilities have been extensively and generally well used during spring and summer. Yes, Fiona, I'm amazed. In the last L&R committee engagement, which should take place during December, what was that expected to be, and is it taking place? I think, Rebecca, you've answered that, haven't you? Because it's it's on the progress and next steps now. So as I say, if you're not part of an organisation, a residents group, but you still want to be engaged, then if you get in touch with Sharon Thompson or Carl Rice, the two local councillors for the area, then we'll endeavour to get a draft to you via email as quickly as possible. Okay. Chris Vaughan, do you have proposals to how local stakeholders can combine with BCC in implementing this plan? And when do you propose to create a governance structure? Go on, Rebecca.
I can give it a quick response, but others may want to comment as well. Chris, you've obviously had conversations with colleagues in parks about how this could work and how it works elsewhere. So I personally don't have specific proposals about how the implementation of this will work, but I know that the conversations are ongoing, and there's lots of very good examples elsewhere in the city of how this has worked. I'm sure learning from those will enable this to work successfully at Edgbaston Reservoir.
Yeah, and from my perspective, Chris, as we talked about at the last local nature reserve committee, I think it's the Friends of Edgbaston Reservoir will be a key agency in that new governance structure. And as you know, Joe Hayden, the boss of the city's parks, was very, very keen to meet with Friends of Edgbaston Reservoir to progress this as speedily as possible, because he does want to see greater local involvement in the management of key sites like the reservoir. So I think it's down to dialogue between the Friends of Edgbaston Reservoir and the city, and Sharon and I will be more than happy to help in any way we can to speed things. Sharon, do you want to come in?
No, it's okay, Carl. I think I'd just echo what everyone else has said. It's a great resource. I know when we was down there together, I think we almost spent hours down there because we were bumping into so many people. Yep. So it's great to see them using it. Rebecca, just in terms of the overall master plan and everything else that happens down on the reservoir, I guess my place is to always make sure that the residents that are engaged in that process remain engaged. Yeah. And that we just check in every now and then just to make sure that that partnership's working well. from their point of view as well as the council's.
Yeah, noted. Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing, Sharon. Sharon and I spent. We were going to have a little walk around, but we never got to walk around because so many people stopped us, and we were having dialogue with them about local issues. So Sharon, we might well do our advice bureaus in the reservoir when lockdown's lifted, because I think you come across so many people who have got a stake in the area and want to work with us in making it a better place to live. Okay, we'll come on to item 6, which is the revised Dudley Road Transportation Scheme. And when we say revised, it has been substantially revised, and it's down largely to a lot of residents in the area who have been trying to get improved cycling and bus facilities in the revised scheme. And I'm delighted we got Saeed Mansour, who's a keen cyclist himself, I do know that, who will provide an update. Saeed, over to you.
Well, thank you, Carl, and thank you everyone for their attendance. I shall share my screen and the presentation. I take it everyone can see that now?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. Just to sort of note for everyone, I have been asked to try and keep the presentation short and to the point, so we'll try and focus on some of the main changes and improvements along the corridor. However, that said, there was a live briefing session yesterday, and the presentation and briefing session was recorded, and it will be uploaded onto the website hopefully next couple of days after the weekend, and I will forward a link to Kay so if anybody does want to directly review that, because it's probably a bit more detailed, by all means contact Kay and she will provide a link for yourselves. Okay, so in terms of background, I guess the majority of people are aware that the original scheme was approved in June 2018, and with regard in light of COVID-19 and the emergency travel plan, the scheme has been reviewed, as well as obviously some residents who have been sort of requesting additional changes. So that said, the scheme now does work more closely with the City Council's policies, and more importantly, complements and aligns with the vision, principles and the objectives of the emergency travel plan, as well as the active travel plan. So I'm going to go straight to the scheme plans. The scheme plans are presented on a zone basis, and I'll try and provide some short bullet points of the main changes that we're looking to carry out and as part of the proposals. So in Zone A, we're looking at the shopping centre towards the Sandwall boundary, where the existing parking and limited waiting, should I say, and current restrictions are being formalised, and in line with the corridor improvements. So the existing limited waiting is on the northern side, prohibited to park from 7 AM to 1 PM, and we're keeping that consistency. And likewise on the southern side, we are looking to keep that consistency of no limited waiting between 1 and 7. The main changes that will take place, if I zoom in, around the junctions, there are existing double yellow lines, but people do often park illegally on the junctions. You can currently load on those junctions, but again, in accordance with the Highways Act, it's not safe to do so, and people do illegally abuse that. So we are going to make a change there. So where you have got double yellow lines, we're looking to put a 24-hour prohibition, so you cannot park on the double yellow lines. Otherwise, the existing parking bays in terms of limited weighting are going to remain the same, and we're not looking to remove anything in Zone A. Likewise, the second part of Zone A is remaining the same. So we're looking to formalise the parking, limited weighting, and also make sure it's aligned with the whole corridor. The other change that will be taking place at the moment, on the northern side and the southern side, there are some anomalies where some of the bays don't fall in line with the restrictions that are generally across the corridor. So we are going to ensure that that is consistent. And there is within the limited weighting bays, there is a loading restriction, which is going to be adjusted in accordance with the revised proposal. So you won't be able to load between 7 and 1 on the northern side within the limited weighting bays, and likewise on the southern side you won't be able to load between 1 and 7 p.m. So Zone B, this is between Belfield Road, Northbrook Street and Winston Green Road, Heath Street. I'll zoom in so you can hopefully see the proposals. Again, we're upgrading the signalised junction. We have an additional lane on the northern side. We have segregated cycling on Heath Street as well as Winston Green Road, which sort of links to the canal, as well as an advisory cycle route which will take you through to the new hospital. Part of Zone B, which is sorry. So Zone B, Belfield Road, Northbrook Street, the main sort of local shopping area. Again, on the northern side of Heath Street, the segregated cycle link does join on the down to Dudley Road, and predominantly the segregated cycling route will be on the northern side. On Winston Green Road, it does traverse down to the park and have an access into the park, and likewise the signalised junction is being upgraded. What we have done is we've introduced improvements for the pedestrians at this junction, where the crossing will be straight across rather than staggered. And there will be token crossing facilities as well. On this plan, you can see the bus lane starts in the local shopping area, and currently the proposals for the bus lane are to be peak hour bus lanes, so that coincides with the TRO restrictions. So the bus lanes will operate intercity on the northern side in the AM, and when we do get the bus lanes on the southern side, they will be operating in the PM on the outbound towards Smethwick. Okay. On Northbrook Street itself, we are looking to close the junction. There's a number of safety concerns at that junction, and we are looking to provide a new signalised junction at Heath Street, which will provide priority to vehicles turning right at Heath Street, and again linked with the signalised junction will provide efficiency of controlling traffic and through the corridor. So Zone C, Northbrook Street to Spring Hill. Again, as I said, on the northern side, there is a dedicated segregated cycling provision together with footways on the northern side. Wherever we've got side roads, we are looking to have a raised tabletop, and there'll be pedestrian and cycling crossing facilities to provide priority to the cyclists and pedestrians. On the southern side, the existing emergency travel plan cycling infrastructure, that we are looking to retain that, and formalise that. The southern side of the bridge will be shared to provide a link across to the northern side if you do want to head towards the treatment centre or back down towards the city. And likewise on the if you do want to join Heath Street, you can turn left and go across the Toucan crossing facility. So again, the crossings are upgraded and improved to allow cyclists and pedestrians. Now, throughout the corridor, in terms of cycling, where we've got segregated cycling, we've obviously included that within the provision. Unfortunately, some areas there are constraints, so we're unable to provide that, and we're looking to provide a shared area for said cyclists and pedestrians. Now, on the northern side, again, the cycle route continues across the city hospital through the treatment centre area and provides priority across Western Road for cyclists. Now, again, the junction here has been improved, and unfortunately, at this junction, we have to install staggered crossings due to the improvements that we're making at the junction. And again, that is mainly down to the design standards that we have to follow. It's recommended that if the road carriageway width is above a certain amount, certain width, we need to put a staggered junction in, staggered crossing facilities. As we sort of go down towards Spring Hill Bridge, northern side, again, you can see the segregated cycling and the bus lanes on the northern and southern side. There is a proposal as part of the revised scheme to add a new footbridge at Spring Hill Bridge, together with a further access down to the canal. There is an existing access on the northern side, but as part of the improvements, we're looking to provide a secondary access down to the canal. Again, I'll zoom into this so hopefully people can see. So this is Zone D, Spring Hill Bridge down to Spring Hill Roundabout. Again, similar to the corridor where we have bus lanes either side, segregated cycling provisions for the northern side. Again, at the junctions, you have the tabletop ramps and priority for pedestrians and cyclists. With regards to landscaping, there will be a landscaping strategy developed as part of the scheme, and wherever we can put in and enhance landscaping, where we're looking to do so. But so the final section of Zone D. It continues down towards Tesco's. At this point, we've got segregated cycling on both sides, with the proviso that we may at some point continue the cycle route down the middleway and across the middleway into the city. On the northern arm, we do link to the advisory cycle route on Higginson Street, so we are creating a link up Ellen Street to Higginson Street, which again will be lining and siling, and towards the end where we do tie back into Higginson Street, there will be an area of segregated cycling and a footway, and again we are looking to put some WL lines down to prevent parking and blocking up the access. If I can then go on to Zone E. Zone E, Barford Road Estate. Due to the closure of Northbrook Street, again, it does get used as a rat run from a lot of vehicles who do go up Ignalport Road, and then they either then travel across the junction to up Heath Street, or they do try and do a difficult manoeuvre turning right down Dudley Road. So the closure will obviously deter that as a rat run route, and as part of that provision, we are looking to provide some double yellow lines around certain key junctions. We are looking to provide some raised tables as well across certain junctions, which will help with cycling as well. The canal route, the NCN5, will link up to Dudley Road, and the existing advisory cycle route is retained. And on Barford Road, we are looking to make the provision a bit better so cyclists can travel straight across without going down onto the carriageway and back up again. And on the last sheet is on here at the bottom, right on the junction of Northbrook Street, in the corner, we are again providing double yellow lines to prohibit people parking there, and providing a raised table together with some speed cushions along Wigan Street. And again, right on the junction of Wigan Street and Aikenport Road, we're looking to provide some double yellow lines to prohibit parking on the junctions. Likewise, as Barford Road, Caplow Road, we are providing some double yellow lines there to prevent parking taking place there. So that's a quick overview of the scheme. There is obviously a web link to the Be Heard website, and the plans are on the website. The presentation will be made live as well, so as mentioned earlier, I will forward a link to Kate, and by all means, if you do have the opportunity, please visit the website and provide some comments regarding the consultation, please. I think I'll draw it to a conclusion there.
Okay, thank you very much, Saeed. There's quite a number of questions already. Shall I read them out, or have you got access to them? I'll read them out, because just in case, for whatever reason, some people may be having technical difficulties. Now, Scott, you've asked the question that all of us will probably had on our lips. Will there be any extra enforcement officers? If not, changes will not make much difference, as offenders at the moment are not being fined. People park on pavement, Saeed, so are you going to stop them parking on double yellow when they don't seem to take into account zigzag lines of pedestrian crossings, which is far more dangerous? Over to you on that one. So
on that one, I would say we have been liaising with our traffic regulation audit team and our enforcement team on the issues that are taking place along Dudley Road. So what the proposals have been sort of designed in line with what they are requesting, which will make their life easier to carry out enforcement. So at the moment there are some anomalies which one sort of maybe creates a bit of uncertainty for drivers who park in the area, and in terms of what times they're allowed to park, and also it can create some challenges for the traffic enforcement officers. So for example, the main one, in certain loading in certain bays, you're allowed to load at certain times, but you can't park in there for a limited stay for 1 hour. So we're looking to ensure that that is consistent. So if it's a parking bay and you're allowed to load, you're allowed to park in there for 1 hour, loading will be the same. Beyond the parameters of that, you know, you're not allowed to park or load within that area. So it makes it more easier for the traffic enforcement officers to you know, do their job.
Yeah, I think the expression you use, challenges, is a bit of an understatement, but we wish you and your parking enforcement colleagues well on that. Chris Vaughan says, why not have diagonal pedestrian crossings of the Icknield Port Road Winston Green crossing? It's not pedestrian friendly to cross 3 roads to get to Lidl, for instance.
And again, I think we have looked at diagonal crossings. I think there was a trial done in Moseley. The main issue for that, in terms of meeting standards, you do need quite a lot of space to make that work. And I think in terms of standards, I think that would be a challenge for us to try and achieve. Primarily because you do need a lot of space. I mean, for example, on Winston Green Road, Dudley Road Junction, you know, we've had proposals or suggestions that could we look at a improving cycling provision around, like creating a gyratory. That again requires a lot more space as well. So I believe we have looked at some options in Moseley, and they were not taken forward. But by all means, I think, you know, it's a valid point. We can, if you put a suggestion through, we can consider whether that would be something that could work. And if it's not, then obviously we can put a rationale to say why that's not possible. I suppose the other thing it does do, it does increase the time for the junction in terms of crossing as well. So as a pedestrian, the way the junction operates for traffic manoeuvres as well, it does cause delay in that as well. So the junction would at peak times potentially become saturated, which means be quite heavily congested.
Okay. Coming from the city centre, the bus lane suddenly stops as the road starts to go over the railway bridge. This is one of the most busiest parts of the road, so it will create a bottleneck.
Yeah. So as you come over the bridge, the new signalised junction, there's only 2 lanes there. So you'll have a dedicated right turn lane to go up Heath Street, and the remaining lane has to be an all movement, all traffic lane. Unfortunately, there's not enough space to fit in an additional bus lane without rebuilding the bridge. And again, that's going to be a very costly exercise, which you don't have funding for. If I share my plan, so people can see what we're discussing. So it's moved. So it's basically this section what we're talking about. So the bus lane stops there, and I'll zoom in a bit. So yeah, as you can see, the right lane is going to be a dedicated right turn lane up Heath Street. If you continue the bus lane through this section during the peak hours, no other vehicles would be able to make that manoeuvre and go straight. And beyond that section, due to the number of junctions, because you need a taper. So whenever you do introduce a bus lane, if you did put a taper on after the crossing, you'd literally probably get a 2 metre bus lane, and then across the junction you don't have the bus lane, and then you would have to put another taper on the other side through the parking. You would then get another small section of a bus lane, which doesn't really benefit the buses. It caused quite a lot of issues, I think, in terms of, you know, people merging across and back around, and so it's a very constrained area, unfortunately.
Okay. Now this is one I'd be interested in your response. After COVID, many less people will be travelling to work in an office in the city centre. So what makes you think they will all return to offices once COVID is over? Also, we should encourage people to use their cars less and to walk and cycle and use public transport instead. So do we really need extra capacity for cars? No traffic forecasts have been provided or air quality analysis forecasts.
All right. So in terms of, I suppose that probably relates to the widening of the highways infrastructure.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
why do something that's designed for cars rather than for people, I think?
Okay, so basically the network itself, the existing corridor is substandard in many places. So the lane widths needs to be improved and widened to actually even put in bus lanes. Otherwise, at the moment in certain locations, you are having conflict potentially. The lane widths for bus lane standards are minimum 3 meters. So if you have bus lanes at certain locations, you do need that available space for a bus to operate safely. And likewise, motor vehicles need a certain vehicular width to be able to travel safely. If you do look to provide bus lanes in the network, you are looking to increase the lane width requirement for the buses, which therefore has a knock-on effect also on the substandard lanes that are present along Dudley Road. In other words, if you did have 2 buses travelling side by side with some of the current widths along the corridor, you're not going to be able to have 2 vehicles travelling side by side and 2 bus lanes. So to fit that all in, you do need to carry out some widening. The other thing is also there's going to be a lot of redevelopment. The Soho Loop development is coming forward, and the city hospital site, when that does decant and move to the Sandwell site, that will become residential, and within the Greater Nicklin Port area, potentially 3,000 to 5,000 houses are going to be built. And again, it's sort of, I suppose, the network's already at capacity. The future developments that do take place will bring additional volume of motor vehicles to the area.
Okay. The final question is from Chris Vaughan. Yep, it's always the poor pedestrian who has to make the detour. Where was I the other day, and there was an extraordinary stagger on the road. You had to walk about 20 yards in the middle of the dual carriageway in order to cross the road, and cars just have to sit there. They don't have to move, whereas the pedestrian has to walk 20 yards up in the middle of the dual carriageway to get across the road. What do you think, Saeed? Could we not make them a little bit more pedestrian friendly, because they are pedestrian crossings after all?
Well, that's what we have done. Where we, I think the only junction we've got stagger in there is the Western Road junction, and again, as I've mentioned before, the other crossings, the Dudley Road, Winston Green Road, we're actually having straight crossings, so there's no staggers in that junction. So we're taking the stagger out of that junction. Unfortunately, on Western Road junction, due to the actual lane width, standards do sort of advise once it goes beyond a certain width, you do need to put stagger into for safety, on safety grounds. And again, the other issue is also if the crossing is above that length, the time that is required to cross that increases, which then also has a knock-on effect on the signal timings of the junction and how the junctions operate, which would mean that you'd get more congestion. And again, we're trying to sort of provide provision for cycling, pedestrian, encourage more mode shift, and with that provision over time, you know, that's what we're hoping that will what will happen. But you know, the motor vehicles will still utilise the network, and you know, we've got to try and ensure that we cater for them as well to a degree.
Okay, the junction from Barford Dudley Road is already very dangerous. Putting more traffic into that is never going to be a good thing. There's a chip shop on the corner of Barford Road with Dudley Road, which is phenomenally popular, and people park all over the double yellow at all times of the evening. Yeah, I mean, that comes back to enforcement again. People don't like to walk more than a few yards to get their chips, do they, Saeed?
No, they don't. But and again, we're closing off Northbrook Street there, so it's removing some conflicting manoeuvres, as well as you know, the crossing facilities are being upgraded. So the volume of traffic that utilises that junction at the moment, it will be a lot safer too, and it'll be more controlled.
Okay. The question I have, Sharon and I have had lots of emails from people living on what we would call the retail bit of Dudley Road, but not the retail side, the residential side. As you know, the bit of Dudley Road that goes down to the McDonald's, the boundary with Sandwell. Going out of Birmingham on the right-hand side is predominantly retail, a lot of takeaways, etc. And on the left-hand side is predominantly, towards the top anyway, it's predominantly residential, and people are going to lose the ability to park outside their homes 24 hours a day, aren't they?
No, because I think are you talking about the section as we're leading towards the Sandwell boundary?
Yep. That section from City Road down to Sandwell border.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side, it's predominantly residential, apart from the top of the bit and the bottom.
Yeah.
And people believe that they're going to lose the ability to park 24 hours a day outside their homes.
No, I think I've sort of might have alluded to the early part of the presentation that the actual parking bays are not being reduced or removed, that they remain the same. The lengths are remaining the same. The existing tidal flow limited waiting is remaining the same. As I said, it's from 7 AM on the northern side. You can't wait for an hour, 7 to 1, and it switches to the southern side from 1 to 7, and then from 7 PM to 7 AM there's no restrictions. So in terms of where
people are leaving their car 24 hours a day, they've got to move it then.
Well, that is the current restriction anyway, Carl.
But it's not enforced.
Yeah, but obviously there's issues why it's probably not being enforced, because I suppose the you know, the current restrictions are not consistent, and there may be sort of legal reasons why, you know, that they're not being enforced or can fully be enforced. So what we're looking to do is be consistent with the corridor in terms of traffic regulation orders and formalise them.
Saeed, would it be possible for Sharon and I to have a separate meeting with you about this, because it is going to cause a lot of problems for people, and we're going to get it in the neck, Sharon and I. So as happens in these situations, you might well get it in the neck. So it would be useful if we could have a dialogue outside of this meeting to try and resolve it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, this is a consultation, so you know, what we would like is obviously people to come back with comments and feedback, and you know, if they've got suggestions, we will look at them.
Okay.
So,
Sharon, did you want to come in?
There wasn't much I was going to add, Carl. I think Scott asked my question, which was really much about the enforcement. And you are right, we are going to get it in the neck about those that can't park outside their house, especially if they've got mobility issues or, you know, bringing in their shopping and all the things that those involves. So it's just really about some more reassurance that they are not going to be disrupted.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, that'd be useful if we could have that separate meeting side. There's one or two more questions, and it's one of them is in relation to your comment that there's only one staggered pedestrian crossing, which is at Western Road, I think you said. David has said that there are others. Look at the map at the junction with Winson Green Road, that's staggered as well. So he believes.
The junction of Winson Green Road.
Yeah.
They're straight ahead crossings, and
are they? Is that the one we're looking at now?
Yeah, it's straight across.
Yeah, there is no crossing there at the moment, is there?
On the on this arm, there's no crossing there now.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that 20 years ago we asked for a crossing there when the Lidl was opened, actually. So it's good that, and I can see it straight across. Yeah.
And again, on that, the little minor detail, that sort of radius is very tight, and we are looking to do a bit of widening on there. It's only going to be a small amount of widening, but it will improve the width around that
pavement.
Yeah, and the pavement there.
And so that's to allow people to park on it, is it?
No.
I'm teasing you.
Yeah. I would say you're going to struggle to get cars on there, I think.
Yep. All right. And the guys, Anonymous has come back. It might be a woman, I don't know. Anonymous has said, won't closing Northbrook Street make Barford Road worse?
No, again, the preventative measures that we're looking to introduce, the intention is that will discourage people doing the rat run. So, I mean, the main reason why people do rat runs is to avoid sitting in a queue and getting to their destination quicker. And if they've got to traverse through a residential estate with traffic calming, it's not as it shouldn't save them any time really. So if it's going to take them any longer to travel through from A to B, then the need to do that is definitely going to diminish.
Okay. Right. Good. David said, good to hear that this crossing is not staggered. So, in summary, Saeed, there are significant improvements in cycling, pedestrians and public transport since the last scheme was brought to consultation. Yeah. It may not have gone far enough for some people, and sooner or later we're going to have to bite the bullet and try and get people to have different modes of transport. I'm trying to walk as often as I can. I know there's more and more cyclists about. I think whilst the car is not dead yet, I think that, this is the start of a process to try and make
a step in the right direction.
It is a step in the right direction. Okay. Yeah. Well, I look forward to, can we try and get the meeting before Christmas, Saeed, about the Dudley Road, the bottom of it, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, can I thank you very much? And can you just remind people, if they want to make individual comments, how they go about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, there's at the moment, there's a live consultation on BCC website. I will send the link through to Kay Thomas. So by all means, if you can contact Kay can forward that link on to yourselves.
Well, I'm sure Kay will send it out to everybody on the email list to get notification of these meetings. So that'll be good. Okay.
Brilliant.
And Saeed told me immediately before the meeting that he genuinely wants to have as many responses as possible. And even if you agree with them, he wants to have responses. Generally speaking, people who object tend to send things in. People who agree just say, oh, well, that's fine, I'll leave it. But please do respond to the live consultation, and we'll send you the link. Well, thank you very much indeed, Saeed, and look forward to meeting you in due course.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we come on to the final item, which is a double act between two of the best councillors in Birmingham. Actually, it says down on my agenda. Oh, it's Sharon and I. Oh, that was unexpected. Sharon and myself, as you know, we do try as local councillors respond to the key priorities and needs of local residents, and we know that this problem of exempt accommodation in certain parts of North Edgbaston and indeed throughout the city has been taxing our minds for a considerable amount of time, and so this is our opportunity to tell you what we're trying to do about it. Sharon, do you want to kick off?
Can do, Carl. So just to start, I think I'll start on the precept around what is exempt accommodation, because sometimes the term, some people don't know what it is. It does seem a bit council jargon, but it is the official term for it, and it is basically supported housing, and the organisations have to be non-for-profit, and in addition to that, they have to provide more than minimal amounts of care, and that is the actual the only place we can look at in terms of legislation, not in terms of legislation, sorry, let me start again. The more than minimum is the testing on whether they can apply for exempt status. So they do apply to the benefits team, and they have to do this test on those two areas. And we have seen across the city a huge growth of exempt accommodation. From probably 18 months ago, there was probably about 12,000 units, and now there's probably near to 19,500 across the city. So it's grown a lot. There is some good providers out there, I have to say that, but there's also some providers that are incredibly problematic, and they're not necessarily supporting their residents the way that they should, and this has a huge impact on local communities such as North Edgbaston. We have roughly, I think, 175 units of exempt accommodation in our ward alone. I've been working on some of this work, and the leaders asked me to lead on some of it. And some of the stuff that we're looking at, which is the initiatives that we're going to talk to you about, is one, we are working on a Charter of Rights, and that's for the people that are living in the exempt accommodation, and just so that they understand what they should and shouldn't be getting from their landlord, what they can do if they don't get what they get, what they're supposed to be getting. And we've commissioned Spring Housing to do that piece of work, and to actually work with people who have lived in exempt accommodation, just to make sure we're covering the bits that we think that they need to know about. This was seen as a one of a kind, because there's nowhere else in the country where any local authority has looked to do this, and we will be rolling that out within the next few months. The second thing that we're looking at is a quality assurance standards for Birmingham. Now, because the legislation says that the only powers the council has is through the housing benefit, and we don't regulate the housing market in terms of exempt accommodation, but we wanted to find a way of trying to drive out bad practice. So we've got together and we've looked at putting together a set of standards, and it is voluntary for these providers to sign up, and we know good landlords always sign up and not so great landlords often don't. But the incentive is that we're speaking to a lot of people who refer into exempt accommodation, such as probation, prison service, some of the health officials, and we've got them to sign up to say that they will not refer into a provider if they haven't got our standards. So that will be a way of helping us. We're tied up in a lot of legislation, where we haven't got a lot of things that we can do as a council, but we are lobbying the social housing regulator who does regulate the market. And we're also I'm currently working with the MPs around lobbying nationally for changes in different bits of the legislation. We're asking for clearer definitions. So, you know, around support. So it's more than minimal. It's a bit skewed. We're asking for changes in benefit and support around the regulation. So that if there's a provider that seems to be increasing their growth very quickly, that actually where there's areas of high density, that we can actually try to say, actually, we don't want that number in that area, because some of them areas are becoming saturated, like some parts of our ward. And we're also asking for a national commitment to no outer city placements, because some of you will notice that some people who are in the live in exempt market have been brought in from outside of the city, from places like London and other things like that, and we think fundamentally that's wrong, and they shouldn't be encouraged to do it. So we are pushing for more regulation. We was fortunate enough to be one of 5 councils across the country who successfully bid in for some money. So we got £1 million to do a 6-month pilot, which will help to embed the standards and the quality assurance. We've also put a piece in there where we'll be doing some work to look at organised crime. So if there's any providers that are involved in that, we'll be working with the police to gather the evidence, and also getting a number of people to go into the benefit service and to do a whole review of all of the properties across the city to make sure that they've got the right standards in place. Some of you would have seen that over the last few weeks, we've had one provider who was providing in the city. The council has stripped them of their exempt status because they didn't meet the minimal standards. So we are taking a high rate stamp, you know, we are trying to stamp this out as much as possible. And in addition to that, Carl will be running a scrutiny inquiry, where members of the public can actually feed into that, and they can also get under the teeth of what things are happening in the exempt market, what needs to change in terms of what can the council be doing better, how can we work better with the partners, and what we really need to be asking more of from the government. I now chair a sponsor board, which I chair that with the Director of Housing, and we have a number of cabinet members on there and senior officers to look at the practices within the council and look at where we need to make modifications to try to work better with local people, but also drive out bad practice around this area. And I think that's it from me, Carl. I will pass over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think you've covered more or less everything. I think the critical thing is, at the moment, exempt accommodation, they don't need planning permission or a licence from the local authority to open up their premises. That, in a nutshell, is the critical difference between exempt accommodation. That's why they call it exempt, because they're exempt from local controls, basically. And it's why there's been so many, because we're cracking down on HMOs and trying to introduce a licence system. People know that if they go for supported accommodation, they don't need to get a licence off the local authority. So basically, these people just want to make money. Let's be absolutely clear. And they're making money out of very, very vulnerable people who do need genuine support. Now, I know from talking to local residents that their lives are made a misery by some of the residents. But if, you know, if it was a member of our family who had an addiction, who had an issue that needed support, we would want to make sure they got help and support, not put in an accommodation where they get the landlord gets extra money and then doesn't actually provide it. So the critical difference, as Sharon said, between what she's doing as the cabinet member and what I'm doing as chair of a scrutiny committee is I want to gather evidence from across the city, but obviously I should have a particular focus on North Edgbaston. I mean, one of the local residents who's probably listening in, Mike, has given me, he got freedom of information request for how many times an ambulance service and the police visit some of these premises to deal with issues as a result of people with addiction and other issues. And it is a phenomenal amount of times that these public agencies are called out to deal with issues. And if I was to tell you one of the hotels along Hagley Road, which will remain nameless, the police visit on average 10 times a month to deal with issues. Now, if the police who have got very limited resources are visiting one premise in North Edgbaston 10 times a month, you can understand how what little resource they do have is stretched, so that when you get burgled, when you get your car stolen, etc., the response time is going to be it's going to be longer, because they're dealing with the over concentration of exempt accommodation. So it isn't just about the fact that they're getting money and they're not providing the support. There's a whole host of knock-on effects that we really do want to document, get a wealth of evidence that then we can submit to the government that says, hang on, we're local authorities, we represent the people locally, we know what's going on in our area, not some faceless bureaucrat sitting somewhere else in the Midlands or indeed in London. We want to have ownership and control of our own destiny. So that's what this work is all about. And I'm confident that with the evidence from people living in North Edgbaston and indeed around the city, and Sharon has outlined how she's going to be doing the work through her cabinet portfolio, I'm confident that we can put together a really good case for greater local control. So that was just for information. We're not going to start gathering information now.
Just to add to that, Carl, the bit about the housing benefit, and I think the people don't realise, is that these people get enhanced housing benefit, which is probably £200 to £300 per resident per week, and that's so one room. But at the same time, at the housing benefit, you're not allowed to pay for the support. So the individual has to pay on top of for their support, which means that pushes them in more poverty. And that sometimes can exacerbate why we see so many more difficulties in terms of the antisocial behaviour and stuff. But the work that Carl's going to do is going to be really good, because the council, we are now working with the government, MHCLG, and the evidence that Carl gets from his inquiry will go towards that, and they are looking at changes. Scott's asked a question about the Charter of Rights and if that can be passed in legislation. We are actually talking to the government and actually saying to them what we're doing in Birmingham is something that they may want to take on board and roll out elsewhere, because that's really important. And that is something that we'll be feeding in with some of the evidence. We've already got anecdotal evidence that we're giving to them at the moment, particularly around the definition. So hopefully everything that you guys are feeding will make some form of difference.
Okay, Fiona, there is a new planning application that's recently been submitted for the Bailey Hotel on the corner of Sandon Road and Carisbrook Road. Is known these days as Safe Lodge. The application is very professionally composed to provide supported accommodation for 22 people, and it will be difficult for the planning department to refuse because all the rhetoric sounds very persuasive. However, the history of the owner's company, both nationally and at Safe Lodge itself, demonstrates that Fair Home, the company involved, are exploitative of vulnerable people and cynical in their use of extensive public funds. How can we help the authorities to counter this planning application? Well, Fiona, I think any evidence that illustrates that the company are exploiting vulnerable people and aren't providing the support that they are supposed to will be very, very persuasive. I don't know whether Sharon and I have already submitted our opposition to it. If we haven't, it's probably in my to-do list. But Sharon, if you could give me a ring about that, we can talk about it outside of the meeting, because it is something that we need to.
I think it was one of those ones where I think us and Preet we met with Preet and had a conversation. I know there was a lot that was going on in that one. And there was we did say that we was going to see if we could actually meet with this organisation and put forward the concerns and ask more questions, dig a little bit deeper. So maybe, I guess, if we propose that if you and I ask them to meet with us and maybe a selection of residents, that we could do this online, and then we can really start to ask them some pertinent questions and try to get under the skin of it.
Fiona, I'm just wondering whether it's the what's the word?
It's the one to do with the health, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it the one? Well, you mean the Barnsley Road one? No, I don't think it's that. I think it's the. Oh, my brain's gone. What's the road that I'm campaigning to get road hums for? That leads from Hagley Road up to Portland. Oh, my brain's gone dead. Begins with S, I think. Oh,
Carl, you need a cup of tea.
I need more than a cup of tea. I haven't said it, but I've had a terrible medical invasion today, and I'm very uncomfortable.
So do we want to see if we can write to them or get in contact with them to see if we could meet?
Fiona, I think you've got my telephone number. Give me a call tomorrow afternoon. I'm out and about in the morning, but give me a call in the afternoon. And if you haven't got my number, if you email me, I'll yeah, it's Sue Generous, yeah. Stanmore, Steve Watson. I knew it began with S. Stanmore Road, yeah. Yeah, it is, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll speak to Fiona probably tomorrow afternoon or soon, and we'll get to the bottom of it, and I'll have a chat with some friendly planning officers, although they're not supposed to be friendly. They're supposed to be impartial, aren't they, when it comes to applications? But we'll see what we can do. This is a war as far as I'm concerned, and we need proper local authority or government provision for people who need help and support. I once went round a very, very well run combined local authority, health authority residential unit for people who are recovering alcoholics and recovering drug addicts. And it really opened my eyes to what quality provision can be. And it's a million miles away from what we see in some parts of our ward, where people are just basically kicked out the home at certain times and not given any support. And if they've got an addiction problem, what are they going to do? They're either going to beg, borrow or steal to feed their habit. They're not getting appropriate support whatsoever. So, yeah. Okay. Well, item 8, colleagues, is items for future agendas. I'm just thinking, Sharon, we haven't had any local police along to the last 2 meetings. There is a problem, as we know, that there are 4 police operational areas. We've got a new female police sergeant for Harborne, Bushra, and it may well be that she's never been along, so I might try and get her and Philip Boff, who's the new guy for Edgbaston, to come along. And we might even get all 4 of them, Sharon. Let's see if we can invite them along, and because I think that there are more police officers being appointed, being recruited. Let's make sure we get a fair allocation here in our part of Birmingham. So let's have the police along. Anything else you can think of, Sharon, that you think would?
It's something that I wanted on the agenda for the next one, Carl. The private rented sector, that Exempt accommodation doesn't sit in private rented sector, but the private rented sector there's a lot going on that we're doing behind the scenes at the moment in terms of that. There will be a report going to Cabinet in a few weeks' time that ultimately will lead to some effects that will happen across the city. So I wouldn't mind bringing something to the agenda to talk about the private rented sector and local people's views. Okay, and if you could email Sharon or myself with any issues you think we should be covering in the next meeting. We don't want individual cases, obviously, about your bin being missed or a pothole in outside your home, but generally speaking, you know, general issues like the state of litter on the roads, or I don't know, lack of maintenance. Behaviour. Pardon? Antisocial behaviour, prostitution. I think that's something that we need to. Yeah. Well, actually, let's try and have a community safety perspective on the whole meeting. I think John Cotton said he'd happy to come along, so okay, we'll do a community safety one, I think. Yeah, that'll be good. But please do let us know any issues that you think we should be covering in these meetings. Fiona says street cleaning maintenance as a future subject. Yeah, that's all linked to community safety and the environment. Let's have that as a theme. Okay. Somebody else has asked for Edgbaston Reservoir master planning process. If that could be something, an update, if that's something we can have on the agenda as well. Yeah. Yes, we'll we can do that. Neighbourhood network schemes. We're gonna have a busy year. I haven't got neighbourhood. Hasn't come. Oh, it is. Yeah. Yep. Neighbourhood network scheme. Yeah. Do you know what that is? We haven't got a meeting coming up on that. Yeah, we have, and we've got a neighbourhood network scheme that covers that does some work particularly around the Ladywood side of the ward. Yeah, we can have that as an item, no problem. Okay, it's coming up to 8 o'clock. We're allowed 2 hours for these meetings, so I know they're not as good as face-to-face, and you can't see the interaction for people, and I can't hear you or see you, which is a big, nor can Sharon. So it's a big minus for us, isn't it, that we can't intermingle with the people we represent. We are better counsellors for you guys listening in, for coming forward with issues. It's a big city. The wards are the largest in the UK, and we can't hope to represent it as well without your involvement and support. So thank you very much for that going forward. The final thing for me is to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and a safe, healthy and prosperous 2021. And let's hope the vaccine comes in the early part of the year so we can all get back to the new normal, as it keeps being called. So thank you very much indeed. And good night and God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.